Catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.
A lot of people either do not know what it takes to enter into or switch career paths. So today we'll take you down the lane to help you demystify the roles and responsibilities in a tech space called venture capital. But then it's more of the venture capitalist itself, because we've gone through what it is to be employed in a venture capital. So today we're looking at the venture capitalist itself. Today we have an expert in the area of funding for startups, especially in the tech space, to drive this conversation to what's more important to consider. We're talking to the MD of Ingressive Capital. Ingressive Capital is a $10 million VC fund targeting early stage startups across sub-Saharan Africa's key tech markets. The founder of Ingressive for Good, a non-profit organization with a mission to create and increase the earning power of African youths through tech training and resources for the growth of the African startup ecosystem. Our guest also founded Ingressive LLC, a market entry and market operations firm that has assisted more than 50 international companies to enter and operate across Africa. And they've done a collective 40 plus deals on the continent. Maya Hogan Famodu. Hello, Maya. Welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
So I'd like us to begin with a question on, let's say, someone listening who wants to hear firsthand what a regular day is for Maya at Ingressive Capital. I mean, the partner lifestyle proper daily routine for you.
Yeah, well, it really depends on which day, because a lot changes. I've sort of publicized my general daily schedule, which has really helped me get some structure and ensure that I'm both being able to reach out, build networks, and also focus on the execution side. So if it's Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, I'm typically taking team meetings, taking investor meetings, meeting with, potential new portfolio companies. Just those are my external meeting days. And also working on strategy with team members, et cetera, et cetera. If it's Tuesday or Thursday, I'm entirely offline, just focused on administration, strategy, operations, and back-end support. And then if it's over the weekend, I, as a rare member of the VC and tech industry, don't actually work on the weekends. So on Sunday is dedicated to spirituality and, just prayer and being entirely offline. And Saturdays are for friends. So it depends on which day of the week.
Okay, that's like a proper rundown. How flamboyant is the lifestyle?
At all. I would say my life is not flamboyant. I keep things relatively simple. I generally just need sunlight, something close to the ocean, and space to do fitness activities. But I would not say anything is flamboyant, aside from the fact I do a lot of traveling, and so I'm a lot of different places throughout the year.
Okay, so at a point, I used to think there's nothing like starting from the bottom. And yes, there are different definitions and attachments to what that actually means. But with conversations I've had with some people, I know that a lot of people actually start from the bottom, especially in these climbs. So let's better understand what your background or your started from the bottom story is in relation to venture capital.
Yeah, so as far as my story, I come from very, very, very humble beginnings. My father is a pastor in Nigeria. He's not focused on making money. He just wants to serve the people. And my mom has been in the National Guard. She's retired now, but she was in the National Guard for 23 years, active gunner on the tanks in Iraq, fighting wars, things like very serious military, active duty type stuff. And when I started, we grew up in a trailer park in rural Minnesota, very poor, sometimes struggling to be able to buy milk, And so I really grew up with an acute understanding of what it's like to have the intelligence and the capacity and the grit to do something, and then having circumstances outside my control, be them access or capital, preventing me from doing the things that I wanted to do. And that feeling was so troubling for me growing up. Like, poverty is like a prison. It's so limiting, and there's so much you cannot do in that space. And especially in the US, being poor, it's all you can think about and plan for. And that experience was so troubling for me that, part of my motivation of Ingressive Capital, ensuring that every African on the continent has the resources they need to build wildly scalable businesses, where that originally came from, in part, is the experiences I had growing up and wanting to ensure nobody else has to go through something like that. So as far as humble beginnings, I started off from scratch, no connections, no access, got a full ride scholarship to university, applied of my own accord into the Cornell pre-law program, got the internship myself at JP Morgan and in private equity research. And then when I started Ingressive Advisory, the advisory firm, literally went door to door, knocking at VC funds' doors in Silicon Valley and Sand Hill and pitching to them and, refusing to leave until they commit people coming to the continent with us. And similarly, reaching out on LinkedIn and Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. And even on the Nigeria side, I started with, getting access to Mrs. Adiola Aziz from Deutsche Bank. And she agreed after some, some emails. She agreed to have a meeting with me. We sat down. She introduced me to the 5 people, she was closest to and trusted in business. And they introduced me to the 5 people they were closest to and in business with. And they introduced me to the 5 people they were closest to and in business with, et cetera, until I'd built up a big network, and having just continued to follow up, nurtured those relationships, was respectful, followed my word, did what I said I was going to do, was able to build something big. But it really, really, really did start from ground zero and no access or connections on my side.
How important were these first contacts to you in starting up Ingressive?
Yeah, I would say, they were incredibly important. I would say, if anything I have, it's certainly persistence. And I can say, no matter what, I wouldn't have given up. And, if I couldn't have found a relationship here, I would have found it there. I would say I am very, very, very grateful to a few of those who, believed and supported us first, like Mrs. Adiola Aziz, like Benga Oyebode, like Toye and the platform team, et cetera, et cetera. Even, Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, those who really took the chance on us from the Nigeria side, and then as well as from the US side, like the Michael of Y Combinator or Jason Seats at Techstars, et cetera, even the 500 Startups team. I would say that as much as it took our persistence and continued, desire and continuation of reaching out and just, building those relationships, I've reached out to thousands of people on LinkedIn and Twitter and this, that, and the other. And we had, maybe a 1% hit rate as far as like conversion rate. But it still took those first people to really believe and understand the dream that we were trying to build. And then also, Joseph Glickman. So one of our fund investors and one of our, nonprofit donors, somebody who's just really believed in me and Ingressive since day one. And I think it really takes those people who see the vision or are like, this person has something there, to push the initiative ahead. We certainly would not have gotten anywhere had it not been for the initial investors and just, network builders who supported our mission.
Yeah, so let's imagine that you're talking to a protege. How do you advise that they start this journey? Are there any career paths, training, major ambition drivers? How do you advise they pull this off?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say a few lessons learned from my side, looking back is one, certainly, I will never again build a company without bringing in advisors and experts who have done it before. Even 2 to 3, it's not a quantity, it's a quality. It's the people who will actively be invested in my success. And like within those advisors, ensuring that they are two things. That one, they're removed from the situation, as they don't benefit if you win or lose. So just third party people who can give real unbiased perspective. If anything, they can be incentivized if you win, but certainly not, competitive in any nature. And the second one is they should have experience in the industry that you're actively building in for at least 10 years plus, and really be in market experts. So when they're advising you on the thing, and not only just in market experts, but they've succeeded in the thing that you're trying to build and you're consulting them with. That's a thing that I realized in Nigeria, or greater, in Africa more than the Western world, are people are just willing to give advice, even if they have no experience succeeding in the thing that they're advising on. And so just being very, very careful about the people you're listening to and getting advice from, and making sure that, one, there's no competition, they have no vested in, it will only benefit them if you succeed, and two, they have succeeded in the thing that you are targeting. And the second thing I would say is spend time reflecting on oneself to understand your own capabilities and weaknesses. And that's like talking to people you've worked with before to get, personality assessments, and really, having those like come to God moments, really thinking about like, this is what isn't working professionally for me, or this is what I keep falling short on. I need support in this capacity. And it's not I'm not good at anything, I need to build out all of these skills, or, I'm not good at anything, or I need to build out all these skills to change everything about myself. It's hey, here are my natural strong points, and I'm going to fill in the team with people who have complementary skill sets. And so the other thing I would never do again is start a company without people also involved in the initiative. Like, I'm not a good admin or like operations or like long-term, maintenance builder. I'm not good at the maintaining type of thing. It bores me, and I just, get distracted about it. What I am really good at is breaking down barriers and breaking down walls and getting people excited about an initiative and starting things up. So I find people to come into the organization and buy into the mission and, share equity and ownership with, who are the maintainers and who are the operators and who do really fill in those other key skill sets that are not my strong points. So really spending the time to get to know yourself, and then incentivizing with ownership, obviously vested over time, but properly incentivizing people who have complementary skill sets to come into the mission with you. And the third thing I would say that's very important for me, and has continued to allow for success and all of the iterations, is stay very, very, very committed to your destination, but flexible in the path you take to get there. I originally started or tried to launch a $50 million fund when I was 23. So when I first started Ingressive, the reason I started Ingressive Advisory is because I tried to launch a $50 million fund. Didn't get very far with my whole year and change of work experience. And instead of getting investor capital up front, I said, you know what? I'll take you to Nigeria. I'll take you to Greater Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, the key tech markets, and I will show you what's a high quality investment opportunity, and then you can invest directly yourself. And so my goal was still to get to launching a fund and, ensuring that every African, regardless of who they are, who they're connected to, has the resources they need to build wildly scalable businesses. That's always been my destination. That's always been my thesis statement. But first we had to do it through an advisory of, providing investment advisory and running firms' Africa strategies and running firms' Africa operations. And then we were able to launch, a small fund, or our smaller fund one, our $10 million fund one. And then we were able to do it through our nonprofit that provides, university and micro scholarships, technical skills training, and talent placement. And now we're able to do it with an even larger fund of, launching this $50 million fund too. And so if I had been very strict with the path of, I need to only, launch a VC fund today, and that's how I'm going to, pursue this goal. It's my step one. It's my in-market or my go-to-market strategy. If I had been so committed to that I couldn't pivot with the market opportunities, and I couldn't recognize, the experience that I had and what that afforded me to do, I would still probably be at square one. So stay very committed and very focused on your destination, but be very flexible in the path that you take to get there.
Yeah, so one thing that caught my attention is finding those who complement your skills and properly incentivizing them. Although a lot of people around here believe talent is like very, very difficult to find. But I'd like to take us back a bit to the started from the bottom story. A lot of people around here seem to believe that when you either lived in or are been to the United States, the odds when you return may just be in your favor. So if you're going to talk to those people who believe that, what's your take on this? Because you've had a taste of both worlds, right? So what would you say to these people?
So, I grew up half in the US. I'm half Nigerian, half American. And I have one other colleague who is part American. He lived in Ghana for a number of years before coming to Nigeria. And then everyone else is, indigenous Nigerian, born and raised in Nigeria. And we have a Ghanaian and a Kenyan, born and raised in Ghana, born and raised in Kenya, respectively. And with this, I would say, one, that in and of itself shows that, our team is built of people who are born and raised on the continent, domestically educated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would say that Babcock and Covenant, they may be fewer and far between, but they're really exceptional universities that are pumping out technical talent that also give people the critical analysis and reasoning skills to be executive leadership at technology companies. And we, specifically target those universities and a few other ones, ALU, and there are some other schools that just consistently, like their computer science, their design, their engineering talent is just incredible. And they're very, very well-rounded students as well. And those are the schools that we source from. And I would say outside of that, you either find one of two things when you're looking for talent. You either find ready-made people that have done exactly what you're hiring them to do before, and you pay a premium for their previous skill set. Or you take people who are just smart, and they're really hungry, and they're humble, and they have critical analysis skills. Like they can reason, you're confident about their reasoning skills. And you take those people and you maybe invest, 3-6 months in them, and then you have the talent that you need in-house. And I think when you're building in a place that has fairly underdeveloped infrastructure, fairly low quality training institutions, really underdeveloped apprenticeships and mentorship programs in the nation at large, you really have to be ready to roll up your sleeves and invest in talent. Like almost half of our team came from Ready, Set, Work and NYSC, and we spent years training before everyone could operate really independently. And then now those people are becoming executive leadership in the firm. So it's not for lack of skill and brilliance, it's for lack of training. And if you're willing to invest the time and energy in people, of course, you can find ready-made talent. You're just going to pay a high price for them, and they're, obviously a limited supply of them. But if you're ready to roll up your sleeves and teach people and guide them and properly incentivize them with ownership or meaningful compensation and over time sort of reward and bonuses based on increased performance. So like just aligning incentives, you have an incredible resource pool to pull from. There's 1.2 billion people on the continent, 75% of them under the age of 35, 20% youth unemployment. There's just a lot of people waiting to be crafted on the continent, I would argue. And the other point is, you don't have to be from the continent in order to be successful at building businesses on the continent. We do actually have members of the team, myself included, who were either educated abroad or grew up abroad and have, come back to the continent in the last 7 to 10 years. And I think that success I've seen in startups, there's some combination of all of these. There's people who have had exposure to international standards in the technical industry. There are people who, indigenous educated, indigenous, professionally worked only within the nation that they're building and have a very acute understanding of their target demographic. And there's some combination of all of these, and people who come from abroad and bring their networks and access and connections that brings a different element and a different opportunity to the project that they're working on. And so I think that there is a space for all of us. There's a space for all of us in the startup ecosystem on the continent.
Sure. There's a lot of value to be added to the society. So just a lot of space for everyone to put in some value and put in some work. What really motivated you into going to venture capital in Africa, like bringing it back to Africa? That's one. And you're in this field, and most people in a particular field have like insider knowledge to predict the changes and development in their field. If we take a peek into the future through your eyes, your lens, what does the future hold for venture capital in Africa?
Yeah. So to answer the last part first, so I'm already seeing all these rolling fund models really democratize access for people who don't necessarily want to or have the ability to raise large sums of money on the upfront before, building out a track record. And I think this is a really incredible model and it really democratizes access to those who want to allocate capital, like those who want to become investors. I also think we'll see an increase in the amount of retail investors, so individuals who are putting, small tickets into startups, and that will be some either crowdfunding component, or that will be just, people making, communities of angel networks are making, $1,000 or like, 500 or like 1 million naira, investments, et cetera, and that being meaningful for very early stage startups. I also think there's just going to continue to be an increase from the institutional as well as the individual level of foreign investors actively participating on the continent. You see, Japan having recently dedicated capital billion, I believe $2 billion on a government level. The Jack Ma's of the Alibaba type initiatives, investing in funds on the continent, or having funds on the continent to deploy capital into startups, and having entrepreneurship programs specifically targeted to and catering to Africans. You see USAID and different departments within the U.S. having dedicated capital increasingly for the tech space. And like what's tangentially related to the tech space, number of sovereign entities and public sector funds across the European Union dedicated to entrepreneurship in Africa. And then increasingly, like the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority that backed us, we see other sovereign entities and sort of government or public sector funds, including pension funds, that are really thinking about tech or actively writing their first VC tickets. And as far as what really got me into the venture capital space on the continent, I can say that it was just a deep and uncompromising conviction that Africa was the next frontier. I was pitching Africa before people thought it was cool and well before people thought there was any opportunity. They're like, Maya's just committed to this thing because it's like, connecting to family and being trying to celebrate her African side. This is like a cultural thing, or this is like a identity thing. It's not really a market opportunity, but like, hey, whatever, we'll entertain this in anyways. And like at the beginning, there really wasn't a lot. Like people just were like, this girl's crazy hyping this initiative. I guess we're going to support it just because she's really loud and persistent, but we don't really know what's going on here. So I would say from the beginning, it was like I was working in private equity research, and there was a time when like I stopped being able to sleep at night. I couldn't eat. I was so distracted. I go into work every day and all I'm searching is like tech in Africa articles and like reading about this company and researching what they do and like really understanding the market size and doing research reports myself. And, I there was nothing else that I could do. And I'm really bad at doing anything other than exactly what I want to do. So that equation meant no hope for anything other than pursuing this space. I mean, I think my own childhood coupled with understanding, just macro and microeconomic trends that really just said to me, like, now Africa is now is the time. And being able to see, the Andela's launch and, the Jumia launches and the first, the 1.0 of tech on the continent, and the CC Hub and the InterSwitch, investments as they came, et cetera, just being able to understand that growth. And like also having been raised around Nigerian entrepreneurs, understanding the unique resilience of African entrepreneurs that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And so if the market is ready, that the African entrepreneur will build. And so just having the really just FOMO around that and being like, I need to get involved in this. I know something's happening and I know something more is going to happen. I can't just ignore this.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And don't forget to catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.